worked. It's wonderful having a producer, Sherry. Thank you. Okay, so with this agenda, I think the biggest thing to talk about in terms of the agenda is there's lots of ways in which we'd love to have you guys all be a part of this. So this is pretty interactive. We've got discussions, we've got breakout groups, we've got leadership, selecting leadership development models, et cetera. So just, stay tuned because we'll be calling on you. And what we wanted you to get out of this, so in terms of our objectives, is first of all, the flow of given company values. So companies do have values, but to describe the behaviors that a leadership would need to use on the job to demonstrate that value. The value is too vague, leaders don't know what they're supposed to do with it. And then given those examples of the behaviors, then identify which will meet the criteria for being a values-based behavior so that they know how to, how to write those behaviors and to fix ones that aren't, that could be improved. And then I think another thing that we'll work on together is given two types of leadership models to describe examples of when to use each option. So we're taking values to behaviors to the leadership development. Now, why would we want to do that? And I guess part of the reason is that companies can say that they have great themes or a mission or a set of values, but it doesn't always work out in the end for employees. First of all, a lot of times the values are just words on a wall. Or one annual meeting or a town hall and you announce the values and then they all diminish. So that's one of the problems, is that they're just words. Secondly, is that they can be misunderstood. We might not know what it means if you said, we run on a few good men, which literally is a set of values for our company, whose CEO actually wrote that as a Harvard Business Review article. And that could be definitely misunderstood, particularly since I was the first woman to be a consultant to this company and had to go through the very same program on how am I supposed to dress in my navy blue suit, white shirt, and red tie. So, and as a gift, they gave me a man-sized watch. So you can see that values can be misunderstood and used in the wrong way. And so I think that's part of the problem that we're trying to solve, is to have values be understood and used correctly. And actually, before I even continue, do you guys see that also? Do you have a sense of that in companies, whether either you're their customer or your client? How does this ring for you?
I would say my take on things is a lot of times it's very fractured in how it's rolled out organizationally. So sometimes you might have parts that really try to live by it, but then other parts that haven't quite gotten there yet. So, but yeah, it does have the tendency to be these core values that get written, put on the wall, and then forgotten. Like, and everyone just looks right by them. So.
I'm on a team right now where I'm just amazed at the core values. They are actually being displayed like in team meetings. And I'm just kind of like blown away. So must be being done on that team that's, somehow the values are just being really encouraged somehow with every leader in that company. Or I'm lucky to be on a team that has.
Cool. Anybody else? Examples of where it is working or is not working?
My current company that I've been at about 3 months now, I see our values in action very clearly as well. So I'm having a similar experience to Hallie where, at the beginning I was like, oh, this place can't really be as great as it sounds. And people really do walk the talk. One example is Uplift Our Communities. And they have consultants who are between projects. A lot of times we'll focus on projects for nonprofit partners. And then we share that back with the whole company at team meetings. And it's, there's a lot of focus on it. It's not just about, where are we making money? So that's just one example I've run into at my current company.
Very cool. I just be quiet long enough to give everybody a chance. Okay. So let's go to the next slide for the big picture. And really kind of as a model to kind of hang what we're going to be doing on is the concept that values, the things that we hold to be important, plus behavior, which are the things that we do, equal the culture. So culture is so important. As a matter of fact, culture seems to be the number one thing that companies are focusing on. I pulled this up today from 5 culture trends for this year by a company called O.C. Tanner. And it basically, it says 91% of employees have negative net promoter scores because culture has suffered during this pandemic. Wow, 91%, 90%, 9 out of 10 people, 90 out of 10 employees don't feel that their culture is supporting them. And so even if we may have written a good set of values before the pandemic, because things have shifted, it is important for us to step up with what are the behaviors as we bring people back, and how do leaders make people feel included? How do we deal with safety, health, safety, et cetera? So this model, values plus behavior equal a culture, whereas the leader who supports those behaviors. And so the way that a company has its culture is by seeing what that frontline leader does, whether they hang the values on the wall, like Hallie says, or whether the company is talking about the projects with nonprofits like Jenny's example. All right, so that's our model. And I wrote an example in our design document, and Hallie, you'll love this, because you see the example I was going to give you of a value is loving kindness. Very close. Okay, so we've got kindness from Janet, and we've got Hallie's unconditional love. And the whole point is that if you have a value of loving kindness and you use that for customer service, then amazing things happen when that employee who was treated kindly as well then exhibits that to a customer. Simon Sinek has a great story about this one guy who's a barista in 2 different hotels. And in one hotel, he's an outstanding barista. And that's because every manager in the hotel comes to him and says, how can I help? Need anything? What a good job you're doing. So he goes to another hotel and he puts his head down. He doesn't want to be seen because all the managers do is find little nitpicky things. Look at the difference in the culture that's made because of that frontline manager. So that's our model. And let me, okay. So real short activity, but it's to the point of what does a leader do that you admire? So now what I want you to do is to pick a leader, and by a leader, it could be really anybody. It could be a coach, it could be a mentor, it could be a trainer, it could be a parent. It could be somebody in your life that you see emulates something that you admire. And what I'd like you to do is to write 1 or 2 behaviors of what this leader did or demonstrates that you like. And what we'll do is we'll break you first in some small groups and share it, and then we'll put it in some large groups and share it. But the key here in this activity is what does this leader do? We'd love to hear one or two things.
And Hallie, if you'd like me to repeat those instructions, I'm happy to do it. Have you annotated on slides before?
Oh, yes, yes, I have. Thank
Oh.
you.
Okay, great.
My internet's spotty. Okay.
We're glad you're back. We knew you were somewhere in transition. You just took the long road. Did you need the instructions?
No.
You heard them. Okay.
Sherry,
Yes?
my box doesn't stay open. And it cuts me off.
Okay, so you clicked on the text, the T for text, you clicked on the slide.
Mhm,
And once you just click on the slide and you start typing,
mhm.
you're not seeing your typing.
No, I see my typing, but what happens is my box disappears while I type.
So what you're typing does not show up.
Well, that I don't know. Can you see loving kindness and compassion?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's just the delay issue you were having.
okay.
Oh, okay. So I'm trying to type in the little box and nothing's happening.
Okay, are you up at the top there with the cursor in the,
Yep.
oh no, joy in the success of others? No.
That's me.
Okay, so just,
I get the little box to pop up again.
yeah, so let's see. So you click on the text, click on the slide. What we had, it was fun. We discover new things. When we were doing this together as the three of us, sometimes you'll type, you don't see anything. Or did you always see, Chris, what you were typing?
I'm sorry, Sherry, say again.
Could you always see what you were typing, no matter if we saw it or not?
No, what happens is that I started typing and then the box closed without my finishing it. So you'll see it says Musham Dema Stray.
Oh.
My
I
box
see.
closed and it wouldn't come back again.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something different, Jessica. But would you like me to type it in there? What would you like me to say?
I was going to say, I was going to rewrite my notes. So the person I was thinking of included people in other areas by referring to them in a team meeting in case they weren't a featured person, just to make the person included. And in that setting, that was very appropriate. Also gave, no, that's good enough. That kind of covers the other one.
And I would say if anybody has trouble with the annotation, you could also drop it in chat and we can kind of see it both places.
That's true too.
All right, so I'm seeing inclusive, vulnerability, a direct communicator, just so people know where they stand and what needs to be done. I love the no failure, only feedback. Feedback is a gift. And joy in the success of others. You're recognizing others often. So we've got a respecting people's capacity. Yeah, it gives room for people to, either adjust their timelines and deadlines or ask for help. Yeah, respecting that need to ask for help. This is a wonderful list, and this actually will help us tie right into the importance of values and behavior in organizational culture. Chris, anything else you would want to say here before we wrap up this part? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I would say that it's great to have examples. Somebody that you can see that how they can live in their life with, for example, joy in the success of others. Then that just it shows me how to be gracious, particularly if I lose at a tennis match. I mean, all kidding aside, having a model or somebody in front of me has been really helpful. Helps to build the culture. It also makes me more brave because somebody else is doing it. and I'm not the only one. So those are,
All right. We're going to move along to organizational culture. Sherry, you can get ready here. There you go.
so I guess part of the point of this is really why culture is so important. And it's more than having a good plan, a product, or a process, because it's the people who will make the difference. I just spoke with a group, the Association for Strategic Planning, and truly, even though that's their business, is to create a great strategic plan, 60% of what they do is to get people to follow the plan and to have that plan understood. So it's really, people are the variable. In another company I worked with, it was the slogan was, if two products side by side seem to be the same, the tiebreaker is the person who represents it. So that's one thing to say about culture. The other part of culture is to define it. And culture, of course, for a fish is like the water that you swim in. It's almost invisible, but it's the norms and the ways that people get things done. It could be what's encouraged and rewarded, or what's avoided and rejected. So if nobody volunteers to make the coffee in the morning, then your culture really is a bunch of selfish people in the break room. Or if the person takes the last cup and they don't make another pot. So you can see culture consists of lots of little small behaviors that all kind of add up to what's okay. Did somebody steal your lunch from the icebox? Hey, I was counting on having that yogurt. So culture are the norms from small to large. And the last thing I'll say is that values will shape the culture. So if your value is joy in the success of others, then a client I had, which is We Run on a Few Good Men, had a culture in which people would throw each other under the bus. Really. They were constantly bad-mouthing each other behind their back. And because you either had to be promoted every 18 months or you were literally out, so it was up and out, is that 18 months is really not a long time to live with commitments that you've made. And so there's a lot of irresponsible, highfalutin ideas, but nobody there to actually get the work done. So all of these things about the values and culture are really important. And again, now that we come back from COVID, we've got so many issues of working remotely and integrating the remote and the on-site people, and having mandates about vaccines, or wearing a lanyard that says, oh, I have been vaccinated. So there are a lot of behaviors that are going to be necessary as we come back. So why don't we take a look at culture?
So Chris, I'm going to suggest that we just ask people to speak up with examples here,
Exactly.
just so we can stay moving.
Yep. So I pulled out two pictures, two contrasting pictures. You can create any kind of a picture of what does your culture look like. And so then we can talk about that. So think of either a client or your employer or a company that's, you're a customer of. So what would be the picture or a description of their culture? So let's talk about that.
Do either of these resonate as a description or as a visual of a culture you're familiar with?
I've worked with companies where the image would be a bunch of cows in a field chewing. So head down, you know, nobody doing anything different, just plodding along, plodding along. Nothing exactly wrong, but
I think the horse on the right could be interpreted to be really happy. It's kind of like what my dog does when he's rolling around and just really happy and having fun, or it could be just interpreted as someone who's given up and just knows that their opinions don't count and just, yeah, almost like the cows in a way, but just, just don't bother me. Let me just do my work. But or he could just be very happy and independent. So either way.
Well, the picture on the left just looks like neither of the two look very excited about being there, but the picture on the right, the horse or the pony is just really happy to be there under the sun, feels the warmth of the environment.
I just put a link in to a bike race where everyone's basically just in a big peloton of people just racing forward, because I think my culture is definitely not a slow one. And it's always, everyone's pushing, like you're expected to push just a little bit further every time. So
Cool, Jeff, you did a nice job of finding a photograph.
Yeah, I just looked.
Oh, wow.
and it's in the rain, so it makes it a little bit harder.
Can I piggyback on that? Of different ways to create a culture out of biking. I have a good friend who, when he turned 40, biked across America in 39 days to raise money for the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And so every morning he would start with people from the MS Society, and some were able to keep up with him and some weren't, but he would ride slowly enough for the first hour to create community in that town as he then sped on, because he had to do at least 100 miles a day. Isn't that an amazing difference of a culture we can create on a bicycle?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, then the culture, thinking about, oh, sorry, somebody was going to say something. That was Jeff, I think.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, you don't always have someone who's willing to wait for you, though. I think
Oh,
that's the difference.
Right, because that was a race to get across America and raise $1 million for MS, as opposed to win the yellow shirt and in the Tour de France or whatever race this is, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, to go a little bit further, if you've ever seen a pace line, it's the whole reason why they're together is because they go faster also.
Yeah.
Even in the competition. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's something about the way it works with the wind and everything, right? So
Yeah, and it really does work that way. Like it's upwards of 30% less energy. So.
Yeah.
So, as we've been talking about, culture really does have consequences. It can really dramatically affect employee engagement, customer retention. And as I think Chris mentioned earlier, employees don't necessarily always leave companies. They sometimes leave bosses. If they have a manager who's not walking the talk and not exhibiting the behaviors that support the values, then it means that it could be a negative culture and it's going to drive some people away. So that leads us to some characteristics of behaviors that I'll let Chris do the run through of these. What is a behavior?
Well, the first one, we all know it because we're trainers. It's what people do and say. If we were doing task analysis, we would be able to see it and hear it. A behavior also has one or more dimensions, and we know dimensions because we know learning objectives. So it's really how well, how strong, how ethical. It's a way of measuring that behavior. The third is that behaviors can be observed, can be described, and can be recorded. And that's important because if you're going to measure culture, then you can take a look at the behaviors that lead to that culture. Behaviors have an impact on the environment, meaning the way people work or the sense of that place. And the last is that behaviors may be overt or covert. And covert behaviors would be things that we do behind each other's back, whether it's gossip, or it could be covert in the way we might brag on each other. Or we, a leader who makes sure that he's covered everybody's back, or she helps someone by offering to have them serve on a task force that would give them a little bit more visibility. So there are some ways in which the leader's behavior behind the scenes is just as valuable as the behavior in front of the scenes. So anyway, those are 5 different characteristics of behavior. And I think Jenny is going to take us through a fun exercise. Jenny?
Yep, there we go. We're going to do a quick little practice with a few poll questions and just thinking about behaviors as compared to values or culture or other things, thinking about the characteristics of behaviors. I'm going to give you some quick examples and you can say yes or no. Do you think this is a behavior? And if you say no, we'll find out why it's not. Because Chris and I are both logged in a certain way. It's not letting me get to polls. Sherry,
You
I
want
don't
me
know
to
if you-
launch? I can
Yeah,
launch.
yeah. Can you get to polls? Yep.
Mhm.
It thinks Chris and I are the same person.
Mhm.
If you can launch the polls, that would be lovely.
It's launched. Do people see it?
Mhm.
Okay.
And oddly, I can't see them, but yeah. So the first one should be the manager who shares photos of her vacation. That what we're seeing.
Mhm.
All right.
Just scroll through them, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I can't see them. So
When I end the poll, let's see, when I end the poll and launch the results, let's see if you
okay.
see it, but I will tell you. I'll tell you what comes up.
We learn new things about Zoom every day.
Is the question of a behavior versus a value, or
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Is it a behavior? Yeah. Is this a behavior?
Is this an example of behavior is the actual question. And then you just scroll through the 5 questions. So people are starting to, we have 1 of 5 people who have. So just scroll through the 5 questions. Is it a behavior? An example of a behavior. And this is anonymous, right, Jenny? I love polls for that reason.
Think so. I never claim to be too sure of anything in Zoom as much as I use it.
Guess it depends on, if you went into your settings at any point in time.
Yep.
Or actually, when you set up the poll, that's when you say if it's anonymous or not.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's okay.
Yep. We're almost there. One
There
more.
might not be absolute right answers for all of these.
All right. I am going to go ahead and end the poll. And I'm going to share the response. And if you do not see the responses, I'm going to tell you what they are, Jenny. You don't see them?
Nope.
Okay, so for number 1, 5 out of 5, 100% yes. Do you want to go through them individually, or would you like me
Nope.
to tell you?
Yeah, so that's the manager who is sharing about her vacation. So yeah, those are specific behaviors that could be supporting a value that is valuing people's personal time. So she's demonstrating the behaviors. So great. All right, what about the next one?
Number 2, 40% answered yes and 60 no.
Yeah, that one's tough. So the safety is important, the compliance team. One way that could be better as a behavior is if it were more specific. So that could be just too vague. People could think,
Sorry to interrupt, Jenny.
Oh.
That's the leadership team at
Sorry.
an insurance company.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't see. All righty. So leadership team at an insurance company. Alrighty. So yes, that one could go either way, was my thought, that they approve a multi-step process requiring multiple levels when employees need new software. That is a behavior, yes. But it depends on, whether it supports their values, depends on what their values are. If their values simplicity, maybe not. If it's a value of valuing rigor and oversight, maybe it does support their values. So that one really could have gone either way.
Okay, number 3, the compliance team. 20% yes, 80% no.
Okay, so the safety is important. That one can be perceived as vague, and it would be helpful as a behavior to be more specific and observable. So, what does somebody do to demonstrate that safety is important? So that might be a little bit closer to a value than a behavior.
Number 4, the finance team at a technology company. 80% said yes, 20% no.
Yeah, and that one could be, depends. If one of their values is we trust one another, and then they simplify a process so that people don't have to turn in receipts for $5 or $10 things, then they're demonstrating that they trust their employees. So it depends on what the values are, but it certainly is an example of a behavior.
Number 5, trust one another to do the right thing. 60% yes. You can see how challenging these are actually. 40% no.
Yeah, and that's where it can be really confusing, like the wall of sample values that Chris showed earlier, where values sometimes are really hard for people to wrap their head around because they can seem so vague. So trusting one another to do the right thing is a great value, but may not be that easy to really see as a behavior. So you would need to figure out what specific behaviors demonstrate that we trust one another to do the right thing. What would anyone add, including Chris? All right, Chris.
I've got 2 examples of trust others to do the right thing.
Great.
Okay, one is from a company called Nordstrom. Great customer service. Nordstrom has 2 rules. Rule number 1, paraphrase. Use your judgment. We know you'll do the right thing. And when you don't follow rule number 1, follow rule number 2, which says read rule number 1. So Nordstrom's one policy is to give their frontline employee discretion. Oh, you've got the suit. Now let's go and walk to a different department to get a shirt that matches. Or, as they're notorious for taking returns on things that they may not have even sold. So that's an example of trust. Another example of trust comes from a different company. It's a manufacturing company where the frontline guy who's on the line, so he's an hourly worker, and he made a business call with somebody who is a salaried employee. And the 2 of them together are explaining how this new product would work. And dang, they get the contract, a big, big contract. So when they go back to the plant together, the person who is salaried can check in. She can get her break when she wants to. She can make a phone call from the company phone. And here's this guy who had the same amount of accountability and responsibility she did. He's an hourly worker. And all of a sudden, he can't make a phone call home to check on his kids from the company phone. He can't get a cup of coffee and the cup of coffee comes out of a vending machine. That was not trust. He felt that they would. And so what happened when he mentioned that to the CEO completely changed the level of trust for their hourly employees. They took the locks off of the supply cabinet. And when I told this story to somebody else who works in the apparel business, and they manufacture and they have a warehouse full of apparel, they created a new rule. And the new rule for their employees is, if you like it, take it, just tell us. Their shrinkage dropped by 40%.
Yeah.
That's trust. Those are my 2 examples of trust. It
Oh.
fits 3 examples. It fits the context of the company.
So we're going to move along and Chris, we are now ready for a story of a company that went from vague values on a wall to behaviors in action that can be observed every day. And Chris, can give you, just so we can make sure we have time for our next activity, about 5-ish minutes for this.
Okay, all right, so I'll tell the story about a company I love. Do you have the slide? Okay, so the point is, while I'm telling the story, just go back one, Jenny. So while I'm telling the story, I'm going to ask you guys to take notes about turning values into behaviors. The CEO is Bob Chapman. He actually wrote a book, Everybody Matters. Bob Chapman is the guy who looked at me and said, "What's my story?" And I said, "I retired twice." And he said, "Oh, you quit if only you've had work. You have a calling." And so that's why I love Bob Chapman. And let me tell you the story of his company. It's a manufacturing company, and they make the machines that make food processing. They're fillers, etc. And what has happened in the company is that initially Bob Chapman's an accountant, and he didn't know a thing about managing people, but he went to a wedding, and at the wedding he kind of realized that when you give away, in this case the father gives away the daughter, that everyone is someone's precious child. And so he came back to the company saying, our business is to pay attention to how we affect the lives of our people. At which point, so give me the next slide. He put together, okay, there you go. I don't expect you to read this. I'll send you a copy of it. But what he did is he put together a group of people in the company who represented high and low, every level, employees themselves, all of his departments, and they put together an employee-based team who wrote these guiding principles of leadership. And the guiding principles of leadership include elements such as allows for teams and individuals to have a meaningful role, challenges individuals and teams, liberates everyone to realize true success. So what they did with this is then they made very specific things that they did. So if everyone realizes true success, I'll go to the next slide, that this whole idea of celebration, so that's a group of people in front of their, they have like a university, and they've all worked together as a team. They all get celebrated. Actually, employees can pick an employee of the year who most behaves like the culture does. All right, so now the last part of the story, next slide. Here, what you have is you have this woman in grief because, there you go, because what's happened is that the business lost 40% of their contracts. And this is capital equipment. So instead of laying people off, the CEO went back to the employees to get some guidance about what to do. And financially, they could afford to give everybody an unpaid 4-week furlough. Okay, so it was an 8% haircut, but the employees could pick when they wanted to take their time off, and they could actually trade weeks if they wanted to with each other. And if you were salaried, you took the salary that you made 20 years ago. So Bob Chapman took $10,000. And as a result of not laying anybody off, everybody trusted the company. So what happened after this crisis is that employees would train each other. So Megan talked about peer coaching. Before, no one, if I build an electrical panel, I'm not going to teach somebody younger, because that young person who makes less than I do could take my job. Now everybody was willing to share the special secrets. People were willing to trade hours at the beginning of the day when they got an assignment that says, you need to do X, and somebody would say, oh, I need somebody to help me for a couple of hours. They would literally help each other on this assembly line. Safety became not accidents, hours lost, but did you send home your friend safe to be with his family tonight? And the last is about all the lean suggestions where they might get 30 a year, they get 1 a day. Every day somebody's coming up with an idea to be more efficient because they know being more efficient will not reduce my job. It will make us all better. So that's my quick story of Barry Waymiller. And I think the question is, so what were some of the lessons learned about moving from those values to behavior? How'd the company do it?
And Chris, just for simplicity, I think we're going to have people put those in chat.
Okay, that's great.
So yeah, what jumped out? What resonated as you were listening to this story? Sorry, I had a timer on you, Chris, and it went off. You
What?
made it, you made it within your 5 minutes.
Did I do it in my 5 minutes?
Yes. Yeah, we're seeing here in chat some what resonated with some people, jumping into train or share help others. Oh, and the people willing to switch the hours or the weeks of furlough. Made it about others rather than about yourself and just trying to protect your own job and your turf. Taking an insight that everyone is someone's child and finding ways to expand that into the company's values and behavior. Involving the actual employees, not just leaders making the decisions for everybody. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I think you all got all of these lessons learned.
I didn't mention that, but when I showed you those guiding, I'm looking at the sentence that says get commitment. So when I showed you those guiding principles of leadership, those are signatures. Everybody signed on. It's amazing. Yeah, everybody signed.
And that's getting commitment. Yep.
Getting commitment, right. It was very specific commitment. Another thing I didn't mention, but what they created is actually a Barry Waymiller University to train and maintain their skills. And that university has now been so popular that they also now created a second university for external. So you as a non-employee can go to the same kind of training. So and that's the whole point. That's the reason why we in talent development are talking about this, because it's the training that helps to get those leaders to do those skills.
So it's gone way beyond just,
right.
their own company.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little practice now. I'm going to move us along from that story. So we have some sample, we have some example values for you, but who has values handy, either from your company or an organization you've worked with? If you don't, that's okay. We've got samples for you. Who brought your own? Maybe raise your hands. So Hallie brought her own. Anybody else bring your own?
I'm looking for mine now.
Okay. So Hallie, Jeff, I'm sure you know where to find them on your website. Megan, you have yours. Okay. All right. So Hallie, Megan, and Jeff will be in one group. So Sherry, they'll be one group. And then if you want to put Janet and maybe Jessica, and then either Chris or me in another group. And what we're going to ask you to do, the example values, if you didn't bring your own, are empathy, originality, integrity, and courage. And what we're asking you to do is to choose in your group select one value from either these examples or what your group brought. And then as a group, work individually, write 1 to 2 behaviors, specific actionable behaviors that demonstrate the value. And then as a group, discuss and see if you can come up with 4 behaviors that describe that value. So I'm putting these sample values in the chat as well for the group that doesn't have their own. So you can choose from empathy, originality, integrity, or courage. So what questions do you have before we put you into groups to choose 1 value and work on coming up with 4 behaviors that can describe that value?
How long do we have in breakouts?
We can give you, what do you say, Chris and Sherry?
Do you think 7 minutes is a good amount of time, or do you want, yeah. Well,
The
you have
se-
1 value, 4 behaviors.
Yep. Does 7 minutes work for everybody? Sound okay? 7? All right. So Sherry's working on the breakout groups.
We're ready. I'm just gonna let you know. So again, Hallie, Jeff, and Megan, you're going into a group. And Janet and Jessica, and when Chris comes back, she will join you. Is everybody ready to go? You'll just get a 15-second announcement that you're coming back, so you can keep track of time if you need to. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Do you see the countdown? I just want to know if Chris has that in her settings. You don't, so you can just at least note on your phone or something.
Yeah,
Okay, so is everybody ready? I'm going to send you to your rooms, and we'll see you soon.
Should we pause recording, or does that matter?
Oh, good idea. Thank you.
So was that challenging?
Sorry.
Yeah. Was that difficult? Easy? What did you do?
It was fun.
All right. So let's hear from each group the value and 1 behavior example you came up with. So maybe let's start with Janet and Jessica. What was one of your behaviors? And what
Go
value
ahead,
did-
Janet.
Okay, we chose empathy, and it's funny, our 4 behaviors wound up having a sequence. I mean, one of mine led into one of hers, which led into one of mine. But the first one we thought of was when someone expresses a problem or some kind of distress, put aside what you are doing and face them and listen without multitasking.
That's a great one, and that is specific. You can observe it. It's something that really somebody can feel and notice. I love that.
I just love these because it doesn't make the assumption if you know what empathy means or any other value that you just make it clear.
Yeah, it's something you can see. Yeah, even if people have different, for whatever reason, interpretations of what empathy is, that's something that's very clear that a leader can do. That is a great example. What about Hallie, Jeff, and Megan? What was a value you worked on, and what's one of your behavior examples?
Well, we chose integrity because it was kind of one of all of our values, so it overlapped. And one of the things was just acknowledging what's going on and kind of words to action.
So like, I'm thinking of a situation I was in where a crazy thing happened at a company I was working at, and then our manager called a meeting, and we were just completely open, and he acknowledged just kind of how horrible it was, what everybody was going through, and that it was okay to feel that way, and for us all to feel bad about it and be angry. And so is that the kind of behavior?
Hallie, I'd be interested in knowing more about words to action. Do we have a moment for that, Jenny?
Sure.
That's something that we started talking about, just like, if you're speaking about what you're going to try to do, that you actually try to do it. And maybe others in the group can speak a little bit more about that. That's when we went back into the breakout room.
Yeah, I was just saying that I was mid-sentence and I accidentally clicked the lead. I was trying to make the go away button. And it just knocked me out of the room. But yeah, I think it's just about, not just promising things, but never delivering them. If you promise something, you always follow through. So, or say why it couldn't manifest itself into truth. So
Thank you.
Because then when those behaviors are not there, the values can have the unintended consequence of people just thinking they don't mean anything if they don't consistently see the behaviors that support them. Great. What else? I think, Megan, you looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, I think I was talking to my daughter.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, what we found was that and integrity seemed to be a common one across around, you know, I was using the truthiness aspect of being a leader or being an employee in the company.
Great. All right. So Chris, we have just debriefed with the group. Oh, okay. So we will finish up. Yeah.
I need to let everybody know, I'm going to take my husband to the emergency room right now. So I apologize for not being able to finish with you guys. And I'm so sorry. Take care.
Okay, thanks,
Oh.
Chris.
Sure.
Good luck, Chris.
Good luck.
Yeah, so yeah, Chris's husband was at the hospital earlier, and yeah, so they have to step away. Thank you, Chris. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you trying to close? Okay. Alrighty. So thank you to Chris.
I'm going to leave and you guys still have my password, right?
Yes, yep, we've got everything. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
I
Chris.
hope it goes smoothly.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all for your flexibility. Yeah, Chris has had a crazy day. So I think what I'm going to do, just knowing that in the interest of time and also that that Chris had to leave as well. What we wanted to wrap up with, and I think we were really overly optimistic when we came up with our objectives for this workshop, and we like cut and tried to pare down, but just this idea of, you know, values on a wall versus observable behaviors. And then what do you do when you can define those behaviors for your leaders, you know, and see what do your most effective leaders do to actually walk the talk and really exhibit those values through their behaviors, then that's what you can really take to start building leadership development programs that help those leaders to really use those behaviors in their work. So really what we wrapped up with, or we're planning to wrap up with, is just the different types of leadership development, two major models, didactic and experiential, and really thinking through when you would use one over the other, and even sometimes letting the behaviors you need to develop help you decide which aspect you're going to go to. So I'm going to open this up here to discussion. So didactic is what we would consider a little more traditional flow for development, and then experiential. And I think many of you have gone through some experiential learning, and you start with the experience and then afterwards debrief. Whereas didactic is the tell, show, practice, feedback, apply. I'm going to just open to all of you. You know, thinking through what we've been going through with values, translating those to behaviors, what would help inform you? What would you consider beyond some of these items when determining which kind of leadership development design to choose for the behaviors that you want to train your leaders on? What else comes to mind?
The similarity of the people in the organization, like sort of how homogenous everything is versus, yeah, how not. So.
Like the experiential is going to be a lot more difficult or take longer to actually see a result on.
Right. Are there certain types of behaviors that you're needing people to learn that would lead to one of these over the other?
For me, I think I always lean towards experiential, just because I think that that's what's the expression, culture eats change for breakfast or whatever it is. But the more you can make it a felt thing, the more you can actually impact people by giving them that real life example, the more it sticks and the more it actually becomes a culture to me. So but it's also the walk for me. So versus when I hear didactic, it just sounds a lot like people preaching without actually living what they're saying. So that's just my bias, though. I tend to stay away from didactic, I think, if I can.
And didactic can certainly be very interactive and very effective. Experiential, I was even thinking of your example of empathy, doing the tell, show, do, practice, apply with, behaviors around empathy. Sometimes it was something like that. You need to feel what it feels like when someone is not displaying empathy, for it to become real. So that would be, a great example, something that is, one of those, more of a soft skill that's a little bit harder to just explain to somebody.
I was curious about your third didactic comment there. Culture doesn't have positive examples. Is that a suggestion of when you might want to use didactic because there was nothing to draw from?
Yeah, I think that's the intent of that.
Yeah.
In full transparency, Chris created this slide, so I think
and
that's
I'm
what
not
he
sure
meant.
what you would be imparting, though. We want to tell you this culture is all about trust, but it isn't. So I'm confused.
It's almost like building from the ground up. Yeah, we have to build these behaviors from square one to, where we don't have the behaviors, we're not showing the behaviors consistently to demonstrate our values. So we're just starting from the beginning. That's my take on it.
I think after you went through that, I think this slide makes more sense to me now too, where it's you're trying to put a model in place versus you're trying to accentuate the things that are already going well with experiential, right? You actually have those things that you can reference back to. So,
and you could use both of these for different situations. You may be didactic is the approach you use for maybe new managers joining the company, and then for people who have been there over time, there's an experiential learning that they go through that really helps it stick.
I'm going to push back a little bit because I can see how for experienced people, you could incorporate their expertise into the didactic model, right? By calling on them to be subject matter experts. And thinking, I see the point in the experiential list about how experiential, how that would be engaging for people who lack the willingness to change. I think the idea is you're trying to give them an aha experience. Mm-hmm. But if they lack the willingness to change, you'd also, I think there has to be a certain amount of vulnerability for the experiential model to take. And so that's an interesting dance that would need to be navigated there.
That's actually one of the recommendations I'd give for organizations trying to roll this out at a holistic level is have your senior leaders talk about one of your values, but then do a recording of them with vulnerability, talking about when it was really hard and why they actually followed through in it. That was one of the suggestions I would often give. So
I love that, Jeff.
It was very rarely taken up. That's another thing too. So
I like that. What was a time when you struggled with this value? Yeah, that would be a really great way to see your leaders in action and really talking about, how they maybe came around even when it wasn't always something that they were showing in their actions.
The hard choice, right? Because that's quite honestly where people often have. It's the hard choices, and why do you make the better choice, right? Versus the easy choice.
Well, I
Value-
am, oh, go ahead, Hallie.
With the values, like in our group, some of us had, some companies had tons of values and others had less values, like maybe 13 values versus 5 values. And one company had an acronym to show the different values and help people remember the values. But yeah, some of the values, some people just don't have, some people just don't have the capacity to do more than 75% of those values. So not everybody can do all the values because everybody's different. So they can try, but I think that there's kind of like maybe everybody should want to do them, but sometimes some staff may not be able to do like 100% of the core values for whatever reason.
So just like truly a capability issue. Thanks, Jeff. Have a good night.
All right.
Really appreciate
Bye
your
all.
contributions.
Bye, Jeff.
Thank you guys. Sorry, I gotta go. Okay, bye.
Wrapping up. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I am going to wrap us up as I think we've all experienced in these short workshops. Can get very optimistic sometimes about what we get through in this amount of time. And I knew we would run into some of that. So we are just going with the flow here. So as we've discussed in a lot of different ways tonight, the values are our guiding principles that help create the culture. So the values plus the behavior are really what equals the culture. And then the leaders demonstrate that and really make it happen. And the leaders are the guardians of the values. And then where we can come in is, depending on our roles, helping develop the leaders to consistently behave in a way that demonstrates the values and really helps create a healthy culture. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a few post session ideas, but we're also going to follow up with all of you with some a few quick resources, and then we'll have a recording of this that we'll be posting that will just be in the members area for ATD chapter and anybody who attended tonight. But I am going to just do a really quick around the room, just one, whether it was something new or something you were reminded of, just an idea that or a tip that resonated with you tonight. So why don't we start with anybody who wants to start?
Working on onboarding now, and I thought this was great. I really appreciated the way you got us to like really think through these concepts. So I'll try to make the values, I'll try to incorporate the values throughout the onboarding in different types of ways.
Great, Hallie.
Behaviors.
Megan, what was a takeaway or something useful for you?
I think just the reminder of being able to, this is Carrie Ann.
Hi.
Just a reminder of like coming up with actual examples of the behavior that's associated to the value or whatever it is. I think that's always been one of the challenges is like, sure, these look good, but what does it actually look like in real life?
Great. Thank you. Janet, what about you?
For me too, the discipline of writing really clear, measurable behavioral objectives, and also that polling questions are really engaging.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Even though I couldn't see them.
That was a great poll.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, Janet. And Jessica, what about you?
Well, it reminded me that leadership exists in all kinds of places. The example I pulled out in our breakout, you'll like this, was a meetup I'm in. It's for artists. It has nothing to do with any organization, but the person who runs it is a good leader and doesn't know he's a leader. But the way he was making sure everybody in the room got their chance to talk about what they'd done this month, that kind of thing, is very clear. That was my inclusiveness statement. It wasn't about people that weren't there. It was about people that weren't necessarily going to open their mouths. And so it was just useful for me to, again, remember leadership is, you can find it in all kinds of places.
That's really a great reminder. And he was demonstrating inclusiveness rather than just saying, we'll practice inclusiveness in this meetup. He
Oh, you
actually
would
did
never
it.
even think of that. You
No,
would
it wouldn't even
say,
occur to
wait a
him
minute,
probably.
we haven't heard from you, Steve. What did you do this month?
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was a nice little reminder. It's a leadership is a thing we carry with us, I think, to our graves in one way or another.
That is wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. We are going to go ahead and wrap up there. And thank you, Sherry, for being our helper. And
Thank
Can we have you all the time? That was great.
I enjoy that. I love all the people with ADD. So absolutely, I'm here.
and we'll all send happy thoughts to Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's had a hard time of it.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all again. Thank you for letting me be
Lovely
an
to see you
interloper.
all.
It was fun. Thank you, Chris. I mean, thank you, Jenny and Chris, for
Yeah.
putting this together.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. We appreciate it. Have a good night. We'll see you at the
Bye.
next thing.
Yep. And Jenny, if you want me to send everything out, just send me whatever and I'll send it
Yeah, I'll pull things together. Yep.
whenever. I'm not going anywhere.
Yep.
Good thing.